Engineering a dual-layer early warning system for stroke prevention. Number 1719, July 18, 2026. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Stroke Risk. Preface for readers: eat more protein and fresh vegetables. Eat less red meat and processed food. Reduce food portions if overweight. Eating a little less will not hurt you. Overeating for years will. Exercise every day. Walk at least 7,000 to 8,000 steps daily. Drink 85 to 100 ounces to 0.5 to 3.0 liters of water each day. Sleep 6 to 7 hours every night. Manage stress. Avoid emotionally draining people and unnecessary conflicts. Put your health first. Wealth, fame, and power mean little without health and life. Preface. On June 21, 2025, I suffered a hemorrhagic stroke in the Pontine region after my systolic blood pressure suddenly rose to approximately 175 mmHg. Although I had lived with type 2 diabetes for 36 years, I had never been a chronic hypertension patient. Looking back, I now believe that decades of diabetes, together with 30 earlier years of obesity and overweight, gradually damaged and stiffened my cerebral microvasculature. Eventually, one acute episode of hypertension around noon of June 21, 2025 was sufficient to trigger a nearly fatal stroke. Following the stroke, my medical research philosophy changed fundamentally. Rather than focusing primarily on disease diagnosis, I became increasingly interested in understanding how to recognize biomedical warning signs before catastrophic events occur. To better understand my own pathophysiology, I began measuring my blood pressure 20 to 24 times every day since the 1st of August 2025 while simultaneously collecting 96 glucose measurements daily using a lubricant continuous glucose monitoring CGM system. Together, I collected approximately 240 physiological data points every day, over 1 year. This resulted in more than 87,000 blood pressure and glucose measurements. This large dataset allowed me to observe many relationships that would have been difficult to recognize from quarterly lab tests or occasional clinical visit measurements. However, one practical limitation soon became apparent: continuous glucose monitoring is extremely convenient because the sensor remains attached to the arm throughout the day. Today, however, blood pressure measurement still depends primarily on upper arm or wrist cuff devices. Although clinically useful, these devices are not well suited for continuous monitoring during normal daily activities because they must be carried, positioned, and operated each time a measurement is taken. For this reason, I decided to purchase a wearable blood pressure watch manufactured by Omron because my existing wrist blood pressure monitor is also manufactured by Omron. I expect to compare their long-term measurement characteristics after sufficient data have been collected. My primary interest, however, is not simply measurement accuracy. Instead, I became interested in understanding the risk warning role that such a wearable device might play within my overall stroke prevention strategy. Introduction. My hemorrhagic stroke on June 21, 2025 fundamentally changed the way I think about medical monitoring. Before the stroke, I had already accumulated millions of physiological and lifestyle details data points and developed mathematical models to evaluate long-term health risks. After surviving the recent stroke, however, I gradually realized that the most important question is no longer how accurately we can diagnose disease similar to a fire alarm after it occurs, but whether we can recognize the warning signs similar to a smoke detector early enough to prevent the catastrophic event from occurring in the first place. Modern medicine possesses remarkable diagnostic technologies. CT and MRI provide extraordinary images of the brain and can accurately identify hemorrhage, ischemia, edema, and many other abnormalities. Nevertheless, these technologies are fundamentally diagnostic rather than preventive. When a CT scan confirms that a hemorrhagic stroke has occurred, the bleeding has already taken place. The patient has already entered the catastrophic phase. From an engineering perspective, this resembles the fire alarm beeping and the fire department arriving after a house has already caught fire. The investigators can determine where the fire started, how extensively the structure has been damaged, and perhaps even why the accident occurred. However, none of these observations prevents the fire itself. The event has already happened. Engineers usually approach such problems differently. Rather than waiting for structural failure, they install sensors capable of detecting abnormal conditions while corrective action is still possible. A smoke detector does not extinguish a fire. Its value lies in providing sufficient warning before a fire grows beyond control. This simple engineering analogy gradually led me to recognize that both my triggering sensitivity index TSI, a mathematical risk proxy for strokes, and my recently purchased blood pressure watch wearable monitoring device serve essentially the same engineering function as a smoke detector. Neither treats hypertension, repairs damaged blood vessels, nor directly prevents stroke. Instead, both function as early warning systems that detect pathophysiological instability before irreversible injury occurs. Although both systems serve as warning devices, they operate over different time scales. The TSI functions as a long-term surveillance system by combining estimated average glucose E, systolic blood pressure SPP, and pulse pressure PP into a single engineering index of TSI. It continuously reflects the overall operating condition of my vascular system. It is analogous to monitoring the long-term structural integrity of a bridge or the operating condition of an industrial plant, rather than focusing on momentary fluctuations. It identifies gradual deterioration and increasing systemic risk. On the other hand, the blood pressure watch serves an entirely different purpose. It monitors acute events occurring during everyday life. While walking in a park, talking with friends over a phone conversation, discussing emotionally stressful subjects, or encountering unexpected situations, I sometimes become aware that my emotional state has changed. From experience, I know that emotional activation may temporarily elevate my systolic blood pressure. In the past, I had no practical method to verify whether such elevation had actually occurred until I returned home and measured my blood pressure using a conventional upper arm blood pressure monitor. The wearable blood pressure watch changes this situation completely. It is not intended to replace my upper arm monitor, nor is it intended to produce research-quality longitudinal data. Instead, it provides immediate access to blood pressure measurements almost anywhere, at any time. Whenever I suspect that my blood pressure may have increased, I simply stop walking or talking, remain still, perform a blood pressure measurement instantly, and obtain my systolic blood pressure within less than 1 minute. This information allows me to determine whether immediate intervention is necessary. From an engineering viewpoint, this creates a complete closed-loop feedback control system. The TSI and the blood pressure watch function as sensors or smoke detectors. Their role is to observe the current operating state of the pathophysiological system and detect abnormal conditions. Elevated TSI values or unexpectedly high systolic blood pressure measurements serve as warning signals that the system may be entering an unstable operating region. The controller is not a computer or an electronic circuit. The controller is my own conscious decision-making process. After receiving information from the sensors, I determine whether corrective action should be initiated. The actuators consist of behavior interventions that I have repeatedly found effective through personal observation. These include stopping physical activity, sitting quietly, clearing my mind of emotionally stimulating thoughts, slowing my breathing by inhaling deeply for 4 seconds and exhaling for 8 seconds, and allowing my autonomic nervous system to gradually return to a calmer state. And like mechanical systems, where motors or hydraulic cylinders serve as mechanical actuators, the human body relies primarily upon pathophysiological self-regulation through the autonomic nervous system. The controlled variable is systolic blood pressure SPP. Once the blood pressure decreases toward its normal operating range, the control cycle is completed. This engineering framework also explains why I no longer view breathing exercises merely as relaxation techniques. Within this feedback control system, slow breathing becomes the functional equivalent of a fire extinguisher. A smoke detector alone cannot prevent a fire. It simply alerts the occupants that immediate action is required. Likewise, neither the TSI nor the blood pressure watch lowers blood pressure directly. They simply provide timely information that allows corrective action before the physiological disturbance progresses. Further, this distinction between diagnosis and prevention has become increasingly important in my own medical research philosophy. Diagnostic imaging remains indispensable for confirming disease and guiding medical treatment. However, preventive engineering focuses on something different. Its objective is to recognize system instability while sufficient time still exists for intervention. Many successful engineering systems operate according to this philosophy. Aircraft continuously monitor engine performance long before mechanical failure occurs. Industrial factories install smoke detectors, temperature sensors, vibration sensors, and pressure alarms to detect abnormalities before catastrophic damage develops. Electrical systems incorporate circuit breakers that disconnect power before overheating destroys the Equipment. These systems do not replace repair procedures, rather, they reduce the likelihood that repair will become necessary. I now view stroke prevention in exactly the same manner. My TSI provides continuous surveillance of long-term vascular operating conditions, while the blood pressure watch provides rapid detection of acute blood pressure elevations during daily life. Together they create a dual-layer engineering warning system. One layer monitors the slowly changing background condition of the vascular system, while the other detects rapidly changing transient events. When either warning system indicates increasing risk, immediate corrective action can be initiated before the stroke's risk pathophysiological system progresses toward irreversible damage. Looking back, I realize that this philosophy is entirely consistent with the engineering principles that have guided my thinking throughout my 52-year professional career, spanning 26 years in industry followed by another 26 years of self-study and research in both psychology and medicine. Engineers seek not only to understand failure after it occurs, but more importantly to prevent failure before it happens. For me, the ultimate value of the TSI and the blood pressure watch is not that they diagnose stroke. Their value lies in providing an opportunity to intervene while intervention is still possible. Ultimately, that opportunity may represent the difference between merely documenting a catastrophe and successfully preventing one. Epilogue. While thinking about the purpose of the blood pressure watch, I gradually realized that it serves a role very similar to my TSI stroke proxy. Neither the TSI nor the BP watch diagnoses stroke. Neither device treats hypertension. Their primary value lies in providing an early warning before physiological instability progresses into irreversible injury. This realization reminded me of TH engineering philosophy used throughout modern industrial systems. A smoke detector does not extinguish a fire. Its purpose is simply to warn the occupants that danger is developing while there is still sufficient time to respond. Likewise, my TSI continuously monitors the long-term operating condition of my vascular system, while the BP watch provides rapid detection of acute systolic blood pressure elevation during everyday activities. Together they form a dual-layer early warning system for another stroke event. By contrast, diagnostic technologies such as CT and MRI resemble the arrival of the fire department after the building is already burning. These technologies are indispensable for diagnosis and treatment, but by the time they demonstrate a stroke, the catastrophic event has already occurred. Once an elevated blood pressure warning is detected, the engineering feedback loop begins. The BP watch and the TSI function as warning sensors. Elevated values become the warning signal. My own decision-making serves as the controller. Slow breathing, emotional calming, temporary cessation of activity, and mental relaxation become the actuators. The controlled variable is systolic blood pressure. SBP itself. The BP watch is therefore not the treatment, it is the smoke detector. My breathing, emotional regulation, and behavioral control constitute the fire extinguisher. Looking back, I now realize that this engineering perspective has quietly guided much of my medical research after my stroke. My objective is no longer limited to diagnosing disease after damage has occurred. Instead, I seek to develop practical engineering tool capable of detecting danger early enough that corrective action remains possible. Ultimately, survivability depends not only on understanding catastrophic failure, but on recognizing the warning signs before catastrophe begins. This is an integrated preventive control system for stroke prevention. Graphics illustrations. 1 year after my hemorrhagic stroke, strict daily lifestyle management has maintained excellent control of both systolic blood pressure and glucose. Pulse pressure remained remarkably stable at approximately 45 mmHg throughout the year, providing a stable vascular background. As a result, the integrated TSI-3B consistently remained below 95, indicating a stable and low-risk operating state during the first year of recovery. The BP watch functions as the smoke detector. The CT scan functions as the fire alarm by confirming the presence of the underlying structural hazard vascular calcification. My 1-year pathophysiology. Caltrend curves provide objective proof that the integrated preventive control system has successfully maintained a safe operating state. Disclaimer: write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. Now, doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to T. The author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.